Good morning.
Good morning. How's Jessica today?
I'm good. Hold on, I'm working on video here.
Oh, really?
All right.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, I'm at home and it's really sunny in here. Don't be frightened. That's just a Halloween decoration. It's not an actual ghost
I
behind
was
me.
going to say, something's going to get you, Jessica. What? What? Look.
Yeah, here I can try and block it, but then I got the big old.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
You're just gonna have to deal with that creepy baby face.
There you go.
It's reassuring to know I'm not the only one that goes through all these machinations to get on this thing and not have all the crap behind me showing up and having enough light that I can see myself.
Yeah. Or maybe I could go this way. Let me see.
There you go.
I'll get a little bit of baby in there though.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to get started. There will be other people who will likely join us, but I'd like to get started so that we take advantage of the time that we have. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, good. I have to make sure. Sometimes my microphone is, I think it's hooked up and it's not. Well, today we have the pleasure of the esteemed company of Miss Danae Verba, and she's going to introduce herself because I think that she'll do a better job than I will, because she actually is a very complex person when you get to know all that stuff underneath, all the other things that she does. I like her. Maybe you can say I love her because she has a nice balance between soft sciences and hard sciences. And so I always feel a special connection to people who can understand the hard sciences and deal with the sort of a lock and step kind of science that demands data and logical thinking, but at the same time has a feeling part, an artistic part, a part of that human part. They don't lose the humanity just because they also think, so that's always nice to be in the company of people like that. So with that, I'm going to ask her to introduce herself and then talk a little bit about what she does.
All right. Hello, everyone. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. All right, Betty and Ryan. Thank you for the virtual thumbs. Great. My name is Danae Verba. I am joining you from Brandon, South Dakota today. To introduce myself, my goodness, born and raised in Sioux Falls, educated through high school in Sioux Falls. I left South Dakota to go to college. I was away for almost 15 years and then I moved back. In college, I got my biology degree. Getting out of the state, I learned a lot about other ways of being and came into myself as an adult and brought that with me coming back to South Dakota. I have worked as a field biologist, a spatial data specialist, a GPS specialist, middle school and high school substitute teacher, a science communicator, and most recently, my job is a health educator. I am a coordinator for the REACH program, which stands for Resources and Education for Adolescents Choosing Healthy Behavior. We provide evidence-based interventions, education to youth in South Dakota between the age of 10 and 19, up to 22 if they're pregnant or parenting, as well as education to parents and caregivers of youth in South Dakota. Our topics include sex, sexuality, healthy relationships, healthy communication, consent, inclusivity, all of the topics surrounding sex and sexual behaviors. And that means in order to talk about a sensitive topic, we have to grow the skill of learning to assess our internal bias and simultaneously appreciate diversity within the group. Those two things, internal bias assessment and still making space for diversity, are key skills that I think everybody needs right now to get through all of the things that are simultaneously crashing down on us. Those are the skills that I've learned at this job that I have utilized frequently in conversations with people about systematic racism, inclusivity with LGBTQ+ youth, mask wearing, name it. So my talk today, I'm going to focus on those skills, and also I want to provide a specific example of how we use those skills in the parent intervention called Families Talking Together. Any questions before I dive in? Jessica shook their head no.
Good.
Betty is looking bemused. Everyone, Lawrence is giggling, and everyone else's camera is off.
They're still putting on their makeup. Give them a chance.
I came barefaced, so no judgment. All right, well, then if there are no questions right now, that's fine. If I could have either Ryan or Lawrence to keep an eye on the chat. I'm going to share my screen, and it's going to be difficult for me to see written questions. So if either of you would please be the chat moderator, I'm going to begin my presentation.
I have a question.
Yes, Naima, what's up?
What's up with you? I'm sorry, I have to go get not my breath checked. I've got to go to the dentist. I'd have to check my own breath. But well, I have to leave early. So one of the questions, if you could answer really kind of like first, that would be, what are you able to do within all of this that you do that would help prevent some of the things that happened with us as foster parents? We were the only place in South Dakota that was able to have children who had had any kind of sexual
Trauma?
Yeah, trauma or cause trauma, or everything is trauma. And we had to balance that, and I think we did a pretty doggone good job. We had to balance that with other kids that were just gangsters and other folks
coming from a different place.
Yes, yeah, because and we were able to do that. But I'm wondering if a program such as what you're doing is able to help be able to stop some of the stuff that we had to deal with, or stop some of the things that were perpetrated within the children that we had. Okay. If in fact that had been what you do, if that had been intervened early,
I see.
Yeah, is that something that could have helped? And I'll stop talking now.
I mean, it surely can't hurt. So the question I heard you ask was, how could this Families Talking Together parent intervention help prevent future like child abuse or something like that, or sexual assault by youth on youth, something? Is that kind of, I'm reframing it.
Yep, that's it, because I be talking.
Never. Okay. So the more that we collectively as a society open up and talk about healthy sexuality, there are people smarter than me who are crunching numbers who show that has a positive net effect on how people express that sexuality, their own sexuality. If youth do not get adequate information or guidance, guess what? They go to their peers, they go to the internet, they make up the rules on their own. And that's why it's so crucial that we get parents and caregivers and mentors to talk with their youth about values, beliefs, risks, benefits of sexual behavior. And that's everything that FTT is about. Now, if a youth has already experienced trauma or has already had any sort of negative experience in the past, we could refer to like Children's Home Society, that they do have some programming that can help families and youth understand and overcome those traumatic experiences. But absolutely, I believe, and I do believe that the numbers and the assessment and the evidence shows that programs like Families Talking Together can have a positive effect on youth and help prevent possible sexual trauma. So that was a heck of a question to lead with, Naima. Thanks.
Well, sorry. I mean, I wanted to put it up there because I can't do, well, I don't know how to do Zoom on my phone. So I wanted to get that. I wanted to get that out there. And I was just telling Rosalind, how did she luck out to get you? So, but
I've got my team here. Rosalind is my supervisor. She's been doing this work for a long time. She's like the expert. And my other teammate, Catherine Olson, is here. So we all teach Families Talking Together and can talk about what that's like here in South Dakota. But I want to do the facilitator thing. I want to pitch it to the room.
Okay.
Like what have y'all experienced? Like what types of conversations about, let's just call it, let's just name the elephant in the room. What kinds of conversations or education have you had or have you provided to youth about sex, if at all? How do you currently talk to kids about sexuality?
Okay.
You live on a farm, so.
Yeah, well, no, yeah, pretty much in farm country. But what I had to do, I don't know, is this is no, this is all adults. What I literally had to do, that's why I wanted to start this early. What I literally had to do with these boys, because they were running around talking about, well, it's friends with benefits. I said, oh, I don't think so. This is not too cool. But what I literally had to do, be prepared, people, we're all grown-ups here. It was all boys because we didn't need a diva other than me in our house. So we only had boys. And what happened when they started talking about friends with benefits, I had to just literally try and explain a whole bunch of things. Well, this is how it would be, and we want to try and be married or in a relationship, blah, 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 blah. And they were talking about, yeah, but it's okay. We can have friends with benefits. I said, let me tell you about them friends with benefits. Here's the deal. Some of those friends got STDs. What's an STD? I said, oh, Jesus, help me. So we talked about what happens when the functionality of the functional parts of the body that are supposed to function don't function, and they burn and they do all kinds of other stuff. Well, I won't be too verbose. Let me just say there were 4 boys that ran in all kinds of directions saying, oh my God, no, that won't happen. I said, yeah, it will. And then when I got them, I said, and then there's the other end. And then that's what I did. That kept them sane and away from people for at least 3 months. Yeah, that's what I had to do.
Okay. Anyone else want to share either how their parents talk to them, or how any adult or educator talk to them, or how they talk to youth about sex or sexuality?
Probably one of the major sources of information I got was a school program, which for a small community was, I guess, pretty uncommon. Like when I speak with other people my age now, who are also from small communities, they were like, there was no such thing as sex ed. It was, trial and error was about the best they had. And I was like, no, it was 8th grade.
Mhm.
And it was a full year of just, sex education, physical health, and just an educator who was super enthusiastic about making sure that youth understood all the different aspects of, a healthy relationship, destructive relationships, teen pregnancy, how, STDs, birth control. That was,
Awesome.
I mean, my parents had given me a book when I was 5 called Where Did I Come From? So I knew how that worked, but just to actually be kind of at that critical age, like 13, 14, and having an educator provide a really robust program. I didn't realize that other kids didn't get that. And so looking
Yeah.
back at it, I'm really grateful that.
I'm terribly curious. Where was that? Was that in South Dakota?
It was in Minnesota.
Okay.
It was a little town called Foley. It's outside of St. Cloud.
Not South Dakota.
Not South Dakota.
Now that is a wonderful story, and I'm so happy that exists. Anyone else?
It was definitely because I mean I was curious and about all subject matter, so I was prepared to self-educate if I had to, but I'm glad there are a lot of people in my class, will say, that probably really benefited from having that available to them at a public school.
Yeah. That your story and the things that you've identified as being beneficial to you align with a lot of the evidence that backs why Reach does what Reach does.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
A lot of what you're saying is pinging for me, like, yes. The age, the content, the continuity. Yes, this sounds really powerful and meaningful. Great.
Yeah, so I'm glad that you guys have a similar program.
Well, we are not in schools. We're a small group of Lutheran Social Services, so we can serve anyone in South Dakota.
Right.
And if an educator at a school wants to partner with us, like, yes, let us get in touch with us.
Cool.
We would love that. Yeah, we're not yet in schools. We are all over the state. A lot of programs in Sioux Falls, a lot of programs in Rapid City, a couple in Mitchell and Pierre. We're looking to branch out into a couple other locations. Yeah, we're growing. So if anybody thinks that their community, or if they know somebody that they might want to get in touch with us, yes, please. And cool. I'll have all the contact information on one of my slides. Is there anyone else who wants to tell their story before I go into my PowerPoint and talk about how awesome Reach is? Larry?
Okay, so I want to, I'll just add that we didn't have sex education in schools when I was in school. Now, in high school, and nor junior high school, which is where it should have been. But we had gym teachers, and the gym teachers would talk to us about some stuff, but not, it was almost like it was one of those topics that was like off limits or something for teachers. And so many of them didn't. My parents, they never talked about it except don't do it. That, just say no. That was their whole sex education class. But fortunately, I say fortunately in air quotes and almost tongue in cheek. In our neighborhood, it wasn't too hard to find whores. And you could.
You're a California boy?
Yeah, San Francisco.
Okay.
Yeah, San Francisco. And if you bought, like just do an errand for them or something like that, and if they didn't have any customers, you could talk to them and they sit down and while they're standing on the corner, like, hey, sister, how does that work? It's like
sex workers.
Yeah.
Give you the real talk.
Because they were the professionals. I figured, well, if these guys are the professionals, they kind of know because nobody else is going to talk about this, And so And I think part of the problem for parents is like there was no like on-ramp to talk about it. They may have wanted to talk about it, but there was no on-ramp. Well, you know, there's no template like, well, when do you start? When do you, you know,
Right.
what do you say? Anything
Yes.
like that. And parents typically don't like to feel incompetent in front of their kids, you know. And there, many of them were incompetent with sex. You know, it was like you make a baby and that was it. You know, but as far as like, you know, like really understanding anything about it, there wasn't that. You know,
Yeah.
but over time, one of the things I was also fortunate is I got into radio, and I actually did I was an investigative reporter, and I actually did a story with a woman who was a professional well, she was a sex therapist. And so but before she was a sex therapist, she had also been a street worker, and also got to do an interview with a woman who was like the president of a sex workers, as in whores, union. So she had started a union
Hey.
for whores. And so with that story, I got a lot of insight into like, you know, like not just the mechanics of sex, but also like who comes to visit a whore and why, you
And
know,
why?
that's right. What is, well, what do they want out of the thing? And my eyes were really open, you
That's
know,
really cool.
about, you know, like all these different angles about sexuality. And then when I was studying to be a paramedic, one of the sort of channels in the course, because we had this course for paramedics was like basically training us to be emergency room RNs. We actually could function as that. So the guy, and it was a new program, the guy who started this program, he believed that we should know all these different angles of science. So one of the things he lined us up with was a course with the coroner. And so we spent time with the coroner, and he would come in and tell us all these things to look for, bring in slides. And a lot of the stuff that he talked about was how people died, you know, in the process of trying to do some sexual fantasy. So in that conversation, all kinds of, you know, strange things that people were doing that you never, what? You mean people paid to get that, or people like practice that? Yeah. So so I would say that I had by happenstance, I had a very wide, oh, one more thing. I was on a board of directors for a Teen Fathers Project. And so in that facility, I had a chance to talk with a lot of boys about how they saw sex and what, you know, what and how they got involved in it and stuff like that. So in that sense, I think I kind of made up for my parents not having a lot to say.
Thank you. We might have to talk offline about all those things. But a couple of things that you said I want to highlight. So I like what you said about parents not wanting to look, what was the word you used? Incompetent, I think, yes, right, to their children, and not knowing how to start the conversation. I think that rings true based on conversations I've had with parents who've gone through the families talking together. That's a big barrier. I don't know what to say. So that's one of the things that we go into. And then another thing that you said is that you worked with young males and young men, and they had questions. I think this came up with a couple of shares. Like they want to know. They want to know what's happening to their body with puberty. They want to know what these feelings, sensations, interests are. They want to know how do these parts and pieces work. And if parents, caregivers, mentors, adults don't have that conversation, they're going to find somebody who will talk to them. They're going to go, well, in your example, they went to the local sex worker who told them what's up. And then in other cases, like nowadays, they're going online, because what is not online? And is it medically accurate? Is it healthy, what they're seeing and what they're reading? So yeah, everything everyone shared about what it can look like when it's done well, like what Jessica shared, it's really exciting. I love that it's happening. And then what does it look like when the conversations are not had? I saw a chat come in, and I'm sorry I did not get to it in timely. Casey Burris, please correct my pronunciation. Health ed in rural South Dakota in the early 90s was pathetic. I don't think our teacher made eye contact with anyone. So thank you for that share. That's a situation where you have an educator who's not prepared, who's not comfortable. And what does that teach youth? If the educator is just getting through it, is that affirming? Is that creating a safe teaching environment, learning environment? Is it perpetuating sense of shame? Or like, what do you think that teaches our kids if we're not adequately preparing our educators? And I think there's a lot of parents, caregivers who assume it's happening in schools. This content is coming up in their health education classes. So it's getting taken care of by somebody else, and I'm going to wipe my hands clean of it. But let's then ask the question, hey kids, do you have any more questions beyond what you're learning in school? South Dakota Department of Health did a needs assessment, and they asked youth, hey, how do you feel about the sex education that you got? And there's a good portion of youth, this was just done in 2018, 2019, I believe. And there's a good portion of the youth who said, I want more information. And then one of the follow-up questions is, if you were to get more information, where do you want it from? And the top answer was, I want to hear from my family. So let's get into FTT. I'm going to screen share a presentation, and I'm going to go through just the beginning of it. And I'm going to talk about this more on a this is the same presentation I use when I do families talking together with an adult caregiver virtually. I am going to talk about it as if I were training you so you understand what's behind the slides, and please interject with your questions. You can unmute yourself. Let's keep it dynamic. I don't want to just be a talking head. Hi, I'm Danae Verba. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I'm an LSS Reach coordinator. So if I were having a conversation, I would encourage somebody to reflect that. Have you all started using pronouns? Have you noticed that more often? Anybody have comments or thoughts about pronouns? They like it, they don't like it?
I encountered it for the first time recently on a group meeting like this. It was awkward for me, but I'll get used to it.
Thank you, Betty. Anyone else have a thought they want to share about pronouns or questions about what's up with the pronouns thing?
I think that they're necessary and at the same time awkward. I think they're necessary because people need to feel like they're accepted for who they think they are. So I think that's critical, and it helps, to me, that helps in the communication. At the same time, grammatically, it doesn't work with how we normally hear grammar. So I think it's a matter, and also how we understand something, because if we say they, normally we mean a plural, and so when you say they, it just kind of awkward and off-putting. And so to me, it kind of discourages conversation, or let's say it becomes a kind of a stumbling block. I'm not saying that we shouldn't learn to dance with that, but I do say that it's important to acknowledge that just because someone doesn't get it in the first 6 months or whatever, doesn't necessarily mean that they are dissing you. It's just
Yeah.
like, it's just awkward. And anything that's kind of irritating like that, the brain wants to just like, well, why do I even need to go there? You know,
Right.
it wants to resist that. So that said, I'm okay with it, but I recognize that it's can be hard.
I agree that it is a shift, and that shift can be difficult to navigate. What I have heard from younger people who are learning their speech, they're developing their speech pattern with this cultural shift towards use of pronouns, asking for pronouns, explicitly sharing pronouns, and introduction of new pronouns, the they, them, ze, them, etc. Kids and their plastic brains, they got it handled. It's easy. I'm 40. I had a hard time with it. I'm getting better at it. Older people who were taught rules seem to have that halt, that this is breaking the rules of grammar frustration. But just like Betty said, and Lawrence, like you said, it's good. I'll get used to it. And I just want to encourage you to keep practicing it. This is something so small that can really make a difference in how a young person feels seen, understood, included, etc. So in REACH programs, we try to model that inclusivity as often as possible. So you're going to notice that throughout the presentation.
Well, a question about that, Dan.
Yeah.
So when you're, you meet somebody, and then how does this conversation turn to or come up how they want to be addressed? There's lots of questions that people can ask about a new person, but I would say at this point in time, not to say we can't make progress, but at this point in time, if you ask just a random person that you just met, how would you like to be addressed? I don't know that they would know what you're talking about. Unless it was an issue. If it was an issue for them, then they would be appreciative, and they would know what you're talking about, and they would be appreciative.
Possibly.
But I would say a lot of people were like, well, what do you mean?
What do you mean? Yeah. Well, as with a lot of things, model what you want to see. Be that change you want to see in the world, right? So it could be as simple as, hi, my name is Danae Verba. I use she, her, and her pronouns. How can I refer to you? How would you like me to refer to you? Model it, and then normalize it and keep it positive. And next thing you know, it's easy.
Yes.
But it takes time and it takes work. And this is new normalizing.
That's right. There's one more part about that. When we meet somebody, there are visual cues that tell us that. And so when we go through this, a new paradigm of saying, okay, look, people have these other ways that they want to be addressed, that becomes kind of like a lot of processing, because now not only do you have to remember that person's name, but you have to remember their pronoun too. Many people have a hard time just remembering the person's name,
Yes.
or if I've seen you before, so like getting to like, well, what was your pronoun again?
Yeah.
I'm not saying,
no, that's a good point though, that a lot of the times we rely on clues, gender expression clues, to try to guess at what a person likes. In all of the training that we do for our facilitators, we encourage make no assumptions. In teaching youth about things like affirmative consent, we say make no assumptions. The only way to know for sure is to ask. So assumptions we try to replace with polite, clear asking. And that is better communication all around. It applies to pronouns. It applies to sexual behavior. It applies to, can I go get this money out of your purse? Property, time, anything. Make no assumptions. Ask.
Good points.
All right. Any other comments, questions? I want to make sure I get through the parts I want to get through. We kind of already did a little bit of discussion about what sex ed was like for y'all. I'm going to skip over this, but when I have the one-on-one, try to get the parent or the adult in the mindset of the youth. So this question is intentional to get them thinking about, what do you think your youth's world is like? What do you think what's important to them? What are their obstacles that they're dealing with? And that usually leads to a lot of great discussion. So families talking together, it usually leads me right into the segue, like, oh, you're struggling with talking to your kids about, sexual messaging? Well. We've got this program, Families Talking Together. It is an evidence-based parenting intervention designed to support good communication about sexual behaviors, and the intention, the goal is to build the skills of the adults so that they can communicate their values and beliefs to their youth about delaying sex because of the positive health outcomes. If youth delay sex, then there's a lower chance that they will deal with STIs, sexually transmitted infections, teen pregnancy, and other unwanted health outcomes that relate to sexual behaviors. And luckily, there are a lot of transferable skills. So if you can talk to your kid about your values, beliefs, about sex and sexuality and sexual behaviors, well, you can also talk to them about drugs and alcohol. You can also talk to them about healthy relationships, that it's not just a conversation about sex, but that is what we focus on. So we already kind of talked about some of these reasons. Why are reasons that adults aren't talking to youth about sex? They don't know what to say. They're embarrassed. They don't want to confront things that happen in their own life, like if they were a teen parent. There's a lot of reasons. And the top 5 most common reasons, what I say is not going to make a difference. But evidence shows that what parents, adults, mentors in youth's life say and do absolutely makes a difference. Over and over again, we see more and more evidence that youth are paying attention. They are watching, they are listening, even if they give you the attitude. Those little seeds are being planted, and they do want to hear from you, and they are paying attention. If I talk about sex, they're going to have sex. Evidence shows talking to your sex clearly and directly and openly about sex decreases, especially if you explain that as your value and that is what you hope for them. Please delay sex because that will allow you to focus on your school, that will allow you to focus on your goals, that will allow you to stay healthy, that will allow you to practice having healthy relationships with peers and maybe dating. Sex can come later, talk about it directly, don't dance around it. And those types of talks decrease the likelihood that youth will engage in early sexual behaviors and increases their ability, their skills to make healthy choices for themselves. I'm embarrassed. This is pretty common. These are in order of which is most common. Most common barriers, I don't know what to say. Next most common. Third most common, I'm too embarrassed. I don't know what to say. Well, just like with anything, get the information and practice. And we do that with Families Talking Together. One of the main components is going through a booklet that the parents or the adults get that has common statements by youth and formulated responses. So when we teach that, we go through that, like read it like a script, get used to saying certain words, get the muscle memory, and then we practice improvisation. So that builds the skill. And we will do that over and over and over again to help the adult prepare to start having the talks. It's not one talk. It's many talks. It's a continuous conversation, opening up that line of communication. And so before the adult gets into that initial talk, we will practice and practice and practice with them until they say, yeah, I'm ready. Another 4th most common barrier. I don't want to talk about what I went through. I had sex as a teen. I was a teen parent. I don't know how to talk. I don't know how to Talk to them about that. Like, how can I teach them something to do something different than what I did? Be honest. This is one of the specific situations that we practice. And just, find your own style, but it's along the lines of, you're right, I was a teen parent and it was difficult, and it could have been difficult. I want you to have fewer obstacles. I want you to focus on your goals. That's why I want to have these conversations with you. Something like that. Like, yes, you're right, I did, but I want something different for you, and here's why. Don't be tripped up by it. Fifth most common. Oh, they get enough information at school. They don't need to hear it from me. They already know it all. Well, in South Dakota, our South Dakota health education standards do not have clear guidance about exactly how youth receive sexuality education. Every single school district is able to make their own rules. So youth are not receiving consistent information about things like puberty, pregnancy, ovulation, menstruation, healthy relationships, sexual messaging in the media, etc. So as a parent or as a caregiver for youth, how can you make sure that the youth are getting the information that they need for themselves if you're just assuming that the school is taking care of it, or you're assuming that they've got the information on the internet? Is it medically accurate? Is it in alignment with your values and beliefs? Because I can teach all day, every day about this is biologically what happens during puberty, and this is biologically how pregnancy occurs. But when I'm facilitating a class to youth, I don't assert any personal values or beliefs to them. That is the message that needs to come from the adults in their life. And that's what they want to hear. Okay, Miss D, which is the persona I'm in when I'm teaching, Miss D taught me about pregnancy and STIs, including HIV, but how do I use that information in my life? How then do I practically make decisions? That's where you come in. You model that. You hopefully are having these conversations with you about those values and beliefs. Kids are not getting enough information at school. They want more information than what they're getting at school. They want to hear from the adults in their lives. They said so. And when you get a couple 13-year-olds together, are they sharing good information? I'll tell you what, when I am out and about, not right now, before March, when I'd be out and about and meeting new people, and people would say, what do you do for a living? Part of the conversation. And I'd usually giggle and I say, well, I'm a sex educator. And there's that initial like, oh, well. And a lot of the times there's that beat, and then it like clicks in their brain, and then it's like, oh my gosh, I have so many questions. And this is from adults. So if adults don't have the information, if our educators are embarrassed or feeling unprepared and not supported by their school districts with good information and evidence-based interventions, and adults are like, what is this? And what is that? And what is this? And how can we expect people to be prepared to have these conversations with youth? Well, they could take FTT. So should you be talking to your kid about sex? Got this handy dandy flow chart here. Are they in a romantic relationship? Are they sexually active? Have they gotten adequate sex ed through school? Was it comprehensive sex ed? Meaning, did it cover use of contraception? Do they know how to use barrier methods and or hormonal methods of birth control? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what any of your answers are. The answer is yes, you should be talking to your kids about safe sex and healthy relationships. So this is the beginning of my FTT presentation. And the main point over and over again, I say this as often as I need to, parents absolutely make a difference. They listen to you. They want to know what you have to say. They want this information. Parents are the model for who they might become as an adult. So they're paying attention to you. You play a very important role in helping teens stay healthy. Specifically for FTT, we talk about too early sex and the negative outcomes. Studies upon studies upon studies show that parents who talk with their kids about not having sex lessen chances of negative health and financial outcomes. The health outcomes, the emotional outcomes, the social outcomes, the financial outcomes of an early pregnancy or STIs in youth. We talk about all that. And I usually follow this with some stats. And we watch some videos, and we just build that buy-in on and overcome those barriers and get that adult to say, okay, you're right, this is important and I can do it. And then we practice the skill. And we do the rehearsal, the role playing, and get them comfortable saying the words and anticipating certain questions and practicing answers they might use. So for any adult caregiver, parent of a youth between the age of 10 and 19 in South Dakota, if you are one of them, or if you know one of them, please get in touch with REACH and we will tell you how to initiate FTT. One other really important thing, $50 gift certificate for families who finish the FTT intervention. It's about 3 hours of time and you get $50. That's pretty good. 20, you know? Yeah. So
How can I sign up?
when you email me and then we get you all signed up. Yeah. So this is available to anyone in South Dakota. And if you're not in South Dakota, we've got some other programs. Every state has a program. They might use a different intervention or EBI, evidence-based intervention. But we can get you in touch with the program in your state. So, all right, that was the quick teaser. Any questions before we completely run out of time? It is about 15 minutes left for Q&A.
I sure could have used this 60 years ago. This is fabulous. Thank you. That's just a comment.
Oh, thank you, Betty. Rosalind, anything to add? Catherine, anything to add about FTT?
You covered really, really well.
Yeah. I don't know, and maybe I missed a bit of it, but just what a good job you do at being all inclusive and trauma informed and just making sure everyone feels comfortable. And then that is also relayed to their parents. So I think those are additional conversations that take place as well with their teens in how to be LGBTQ friendly. And, we specifically, our target population is at-risk youth. So just thinking about what that means for teens these days, those that are susceptible to social media targets, bullying, just everything. So these are all really good conversations that take place when working with parents. So.
Yeah. That like each time we have a conversation with a parent, we talk about their youth. What are they dealing with? Are they in a sexual gender minority? Have they experienced sexual trauma or other types of trauma? And how do we incorporate that into how they tailor their message? Tailoring that message, because that adult is the expert in the youth, not me, not Rosalind, not Catherine. So tailoring the message to their youth, incorporating their specific beliefs and values and opinions. Yeah, that's a huge part of FTT.
And it leads to identifying all the resources available in their local community, as well as what further we can do to help educate youth, because we teach other classes as well, but it's just exactly what that youth needs. Hopefully we can find a way to fill that need. So, but it's good, awesome conversation to have with parents.
One of the questions that always comes up for me whenever I'm engaged in sex education or in some kind of discussion like we're having here, is we often talk about what people should do, but we don't talk about how. Okay, so I think the biology would tell you that we have a very deep programmed desire for sex. Most people do. And
You're right, not everybody, but
no,
a
not
lot of
everybody,
people, a
not
lot of people
everybody,
do.
not everybody. And all people don't have two legs, but
That's right,
a lot of,
diversity.
that's right, diversity, all right? But many people have a desire for sex, and the libidos are varying degrees. Some people, it's like, oh, they're asexual. They, just the whole thing doesn't make any sense to them. Other people like, well, yeah, I could take it or leave it, and most of the time I'm bored with it or something like that. And other people, they can't get it out of their mind. You know what I mean? Like everything they see points to some indication about sex. So they're in a constant struggle with that. So, so I have two questions that are kind of like in the same, I think they're in the same kind of ball of wax. One, what is the evidence-based, if there is such a thing, what is the evidence-based approach to having someone successfully deal with their sexual desires? And two, under that same rubric, what is the conversation a parent has with their child, particularly boys, about dreams that boys have with sexual fantasy that often end up with physical evidence?
Yeah.
What is the conversation, and how does a parent bring that up, and what are they supposed to say?
All
Who
right.
gets blamed for that dream?
Lawrence. Okay, so the two distinct questions there, I think. I we
Well,
can
I put them together because
one.
they both have to do with sexual desire.
They do. So for the first one, I don't feel like I am the expert to manage that. There are plenty of people who are doing research about those types of questions. How do we effectively tailor messages so youth get what they need, and all sorts of related questions, and what are effective teaching methods for this, and etc. We've got a variety of teaching methods that we're trained on in order to deliver EBIs. Again, developed by smarter people than me who have done the assessments and have the evidence to back that these are effective when implemented appropriately. That's a whole other talk, unfortunately, but I'm happy to get you resources after this presentation.
Sure.
And then for the second question, like how do parents talk to youth about their sexual dreams? Because I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. Girls and women have sexual content dreams too.
Yes, I think I said that. I think I said that at the beginning.
Good.
It tends to be, it's at least the research that I've shown that both have it, but boys tend to have it more, and it's more intense, and they usually have an unmistakable evidence the next day.
Right. So if I were,
and the flashbacks tend to be deeper for boys.
So
during the day.
I can't speak to the experience of being a person with a penis. I don't have a penis. For our facilitators, what we teach facilitators, and we can also help teach parents and adults this skill, is answering a sensitive question. I have, if you'll allow me, I can pull up the framework, but we teach a framework where it's, listen and affirm, like, that's a great question. So what I heard you say was you want to know how we can talk to young people with penises about, like, what do we call it? Nocturnal emissions. Wet dreams is what slang term is. And then answer with some facts. So in this class, or when we're talking about it, make sure we're using clear language and using medically accurate terms, and talk about the diversity of experience. So some people, this is frequent and they may feel it's happening too often. Some people it's occasional, some people it never happens. And, you know, if you have a concern, or if somebody is concerned, they could talk to a medical professional about it. Something like that. You know, that was on the fly, but that kind of cool, calm, collected, you can't shake me with no matter what kind of question you come at, that takes practice. Learning the answering sensitive questions framework really helps. And I have definitely used that in other conversations. Like, what a great question. Listen and affirm. Rephrase so that they know that you heard. And if we're in one of my classes, I would then change slang terms into medically accurate terms, or clearer terms, and get that youth's buy-in. Like, is this your question? Did I understand you correctly? And then I would answer with more facts. And then I might talk about the diversity of experiences. And then I would encourage them to refer to an expert, especially a medical expert or a trusted adult. And like, I can't think of an example of when I wasn't able to use that framework to manage a question. And we get some questions. We get some questions. And that can be a whole other.
Yeah. I'm sure. But the reason I raised that question, Danae, is because I hear people talking all the time about, from the pulpit and everything else, you know, messages, but nobody says, okay, this kid every time, or adults as well, they're always thinking about sex, whether they're boys or girls, and they don't say, well, okay, look, when you get this thing that your mind just wanted, like everything you see just looks like some kind of sexual prompt. Do this so it'll go away.
So a strategy.
Yeah. What's the strategy for like decreasing my sexual or controlling my sexual libido? Can I take some kind of drugs? Can I do a kind of certain kind of exercise? And when I feel this rush, you know, for example, we know like in violence, when we're teaching like violence, you know, like strategies for dealing with violence, we can say, look, notice that before, you know, you get angry, do you ever feel like something sort of like welling up in you? Does it just like pop, or and then if you do this thing so it doesn't spin off the rail. Okay. And you know what I mean?
I think so.
And so a strategy for dealing with one's libido, that's the thing that I don't hear people talking about.
I'm racking my brain. And I'm not thinking of anything. That's a really good question though. Like, what if a youth has that kind of question? Am I prepared? Are we prepared to answer that? Wow. Especially like, I don't have a penis, so how comfortably can I discuss managing a surprise erection with a young boy?
Exactly.
Things like that. But I'm sure that there are a lot of people who have this question. How do I manage intrusive thoughts? How do I manage when my body does something that I don't want it to do, when I don't want it to do it? I'm trying to think of if we have any content right now that addresses it directly.
Or even experts. You know, when I've talked to people who are supposed to be experts, they don't have, so far, nobody's given me an answer about what they do that's consistent.
You know, but we could probably, if we don't have anything, we could probably go find it and get that to you. And that's another way of handling questions. Is that's a really good question. I'm going to need to get back to you. I'm going to go find an answer.
But you better get back to kids, because if you don't, you've lost them.
Yes.
You know, you can't do that politician thing of saying, well, we'll get to that, but we'll want to talk about this. We can't do that. Because
you're right.
You will lose the whole confidence.
The integrity just, exactly. And when we train our facilitators, we say, don't make it up. If you don't know, if you don't have the reference, don't feed them half-truths. That doesn't help anybody. And if you're uncomfortable or uncertain, say so. You know, I'm going to have to get back to you. And then you're absolutely right. Follow through. Because if you're making it up, kids have the best bullcrap detector. They're going to know.
They know.
What good is it to give them inaccurate information? That doesn't help them make healthy choices. And then if you say you're going to do something and you don't follow through, well, there went the trust.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. That's another thing we talk about in our trainings. You gotta provide the facts And if you can't do it today, then you better do it tomorrow.
Or at least
When you
come
say
back
you
and,
will.
or at least come back and say, I thought I could find that, but I couldn't find it either.
Yeah.
So you got me stumped.
Okay, well, I got my colleague Catherine. She's aware of a group. Is it group home? I'm not sure. Our Home ASAP is in the center of the state, and they help me out here, Rosalind and Catherine. Are they a residential psychiatric treatment facility?
So our Home ASAP, how they use, how they define their program is they're a group home who work with sexually aggressive males.
Okay.
And so they have many, many materials on how to discuss intrusive thoughts, how to discuss when your body does something that you might not, it might not be the most opportune moment for it to do that. So we could definitely contact someone there and see if they have any universal materials that could be distributed.
Useful.
I don't know where Danae went.
You there, Danae? She might have got knocked off.
Maybe.
Oh, I don't know.
But those are good questions. I just want to say thank you, because it makes me think about what else could possibly come up when you're talking with parents or when parents are talking to their youth. And just another way of, okay, how can we coordinate all the resources in our community to get this youth the services they need? So,
You know, one of the
thanks for asking.
Yeah, you know, I think one of the things that this leads to in terms of like actual dealing with it, you know, setting the principles is great because then we have a framework to look at this. But it really comes down to what does that person do when you go out on a date? Maybe you're just holding hands, but the holding hand gets intense and you kiss and then you kiss, you know, and then pretty soon you're in a full-fledged thing. It's out of, you know, you're spun off the rail. So, and sometimes it's all you're thinking about all day is how can I get in this girl's pants, you know? Well,
Right.
where's the thing? What do you say? And I think it has to do with this. We have an idea about free will. That is, if I say that I'm not going to do something, I can just choose not to do it. And we don't account for the power of the amygdala, you know, and we don't account for the power of the sexual drive overriding the prefrontal cortex. And it does it all the time.
That's right.
You know, so
Yes, it does.
if we don't, if we're not dealing with, well, how do we keep the amygdala in control, then I think the rest it becomes kind of cocktail talk, necessary cocktail talk. It does something, but I don't think it helps. It's kind of like that program Dare. It's like it doesn't really help as much. The kid who wasn't going to do it, they're enamored with Dare, but the kid who just already he's smoking joints, it's not reaching him. You know, because your program is based on like the adult who already thinks, who's already convinced, and they don't have that need for that thing, whatever that need is. So I'm looking for like, well, what is the road to something that's practical for these young people and old people?
Okay. Yeah, well, we work with youth, so I can speak to a little bit about how the evidence-based interventions help youth understand their brain, how puberty is affecting their brain and thoughts and feelings. And we do have some strategies for avoiding situations where they might be put in a difficult situation. So another one of our programs called Making a Difference is geared towards like middle school aged youth. And there's a whole hour-long conversation about puberty. The hormones and the hair and the brain development. There's a video, we discuss it, and normalizing like, yeah, sexual thoughts and feelings are a part of puberty, and puberty is different for everybody. And one part of puberty is your body preparing for reproduction, and part of reproduction is wanting to reproduce. So those thoughts and okay, but what does it mean? How do you have those thoughts and feelings and still stay focused on your schoolwork? Part of what Making a Difference talks about is, what are your goals? Keep those at front of mind before you get yourself into a situation where you might feel pressured or an overwhelming sense to have sex or drink or do drugs or, whatever, a risky situation. Keep your goals at front of mind. Let's write them down. Let's refer to them constantly. And we also talk about those risky situations and what those flags are, the green flags of a good relationship with respect and what that looks like and feels like, yellow flags of my gut is telling me that maybe I don't want to be here. Is this helping me get closer to my goals, or is this going to get me further away and add barriers and obstacles and hurdles to reach my goals? Red flag, this is not safe. I do not want to be here. How do I get out of it? So we do have a couple. So Making a Difference is for middle school age youth and talks about puberty and is very abstinence focused of sexual risk avoidance. Then we have a sister program, very similar content, called Making Proud Choices, which is more for like high schooler, that talks about more about safer sex, contraception, barrier methods, hormonal methods, but still practices those decision-making skills, communication skills, identifying healthy, unhealthy, abusive situations. So we might not directly have something to talk about what you're talking, Lawrence, but we have some things that are skill building for you so that they can make healthier sexual decisions. And that's in a class that like Catherine, Roslyn, or I can teach, or one of our trained facilitators. It's still important that the adults in this youth's life is talking about goals, values, beliefs, opinions about the decisions that they're making. Giving them a plan, like, what do you do if you think that you're in an unsafe situation? I hope you call me. I hope you talk to me. I'm in the role of a parent right now. I hope you can tell me about it, what you're going through. I hope you know that I'm always going to be here to help you get out of that risky, like make me the bad guy. Oh, I can't go to that party because my mom won't let me. Like, give them outs, give them strategies. That's part of FTT as well. And also another part of FTT is encouraging parents and caregivers to have a plan for monitoring and supervising their youth. So it's not just about giving the youth all the skills, because they don't have a fully developed brain yet. What can a parent caregiver do to set their youth up for success? What are the boundaries that you can create in their life where they still have freedom that is appropriate, but structure and safety to help them avoid risky situations? That's a whole other part that I really didn't get into. But all this together, hopefully some piece or part of it will answer that question. What do I do if I'm holding hands and that leads to kissing and that leads to heavy petting? How do I disrupt that? How do I get out of it? Well, first is avoidance, like know up front that you don't want to do it. Talk to your partner that this is not what I want to do. That helps a lot. Have some outs. I can call my mom. Or if I'm feeling that way, I can get up and walk into the bathroom. And then we also have a supplemental. I have it. I have a prop. Ta-da! Teaching affirmative consent. So in addition to the role plays that we do in our evidence-based interventions about handling peer or partner pressure, we also have, which is all about how do I say no? We also have this entire lesson, how do I say and understand yes? Which is just as important. And these two messages paired together, how do I say no? How do I avoid situations where I might have to say no? How do I ask for, and how do I understand and convey a clear yes? Pair those two messages and the youth are suddenly given all sorts of tools in their toolbox for healthy communication. magic. No, not magic. There's like 12 hours of content that we can get through. So I just did a lot of rambling. I would like to take a step back and open it up for more questions. Betty.
Yes, I used to think that the fact that I had zero sex education or discussion with my parents was just something that happened in my age group. I now know that it still happens.
Yes.
Children are still being raised without the words to express their emotions or their sexual feelings or anything. So what you've just covered about parental involvement is really pertinent right now and critical, because then I don't like to, I don't want to just get personal, but I can remember being in those situations when I was, say, 15, 16 years old, and it was so strange and it was so forbidden to think about and do, just because I had this big gloom thing about it hanging over me through church and parental non-involvement. You have this feeling, this must really be awful, and I probably shouldn't be even involved in this situation at all, but no way to deal with it. And it was, so thank you for what you've brought forth, and it's going to be valuable to me in a project I'm involved in, and I'll get to you that another day.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you for that reflection. And I think everything you say is true, that the only way to overcome certain things is to talk about them.
Yeah.
If you do nothing, what's going to change?
Yeah. To have some words, already in your mouth that you can speak when you need to, really helps a lot. That practice.
Yes.
So,
And I put my contact information and my program's website in the chat, but if you need that, it's also on the screen share I've got going right now. If you have follow-up questions, if you just want to email us and tell us how awesome we are, like, yes, do that. Or if you have ideas, like Betty said, she's got an idea of how this program or something might plug into something else she's got going on, please. We are doing outreach like this, presenting our program to other organizations because we want those organic relationships and referrals. So yeah, yes, please.
League of Women Voters is about to launch a new initiative, nationwide it's being launched, and it has to do with diversity, inclusion, and equality. And
and sexual health is absolutely a part of that. Reproductive health for everybody.
Yeah.
Personal hot take. So yeah, I would love to know more. Please get in touch.
This is Alphonse Keesley.
Hello, Alphonse.
Hi. I really appreciated your presentation. I wonder if you wouldn't mind, I may have missed it, but talk about why the framework of trauma is so important in these kinds of discourses today.
Good question. Trauma. Well, in a nutshell, if a person has experienced trauma, then that implies that their body and brain react in a specific way when they experience a trauma cue. And in that triggered or cued state, they are not learning anything. It is fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. They might not even form short-term memories. They will not retain. They might become disruptive. They might shut down. It is not a learning state of mind. So in order to help maintain a safe, open, comfortable learning environment, when talking about topics such as sex and sexuality, we utilize some trauma-informed, trauma-sensitive practices. So one of the very main ones is consent. Consent every step of the way. Please, yes, take the survey. If you don't want to, you don't have to. Please, yes, participate in our games. If you don't want to, you don't have to. And then giving youth the permission to opt in or opt out, encouraging opting in without pressuring, modeling that, and creating choice as often as possible. And then in addition to creating choice and allowing youth to consent, we also create or establish norms. If someone wants to opt out, how do you communicate that? In my class, I say, all you have to say is no, thank you. And I will hear your no, and I will move on. I might check back in with you. And that's just me creating an opportunity. If you want to join, yes, we want you to join. Everybody learns more when more people participate. If you still don't want to participate, just say no, thank you. I will hear your no. I will respect your no, and I will move on. My only ask is that if you're not participating, you do not disrupt other people's learning. So modeling those types of things, creating that norm of consent, and then giving youth the framework to communicate what they want or they don't want is a really key step, or just like one simple thing that all our facilitators can do to maintain a trauma sensitive environment. But consent, and also scaffolding in, so no surprises. Surprises are bad. If you want to be a trauma informed, trauma sensitive educator, introducing things. So there's a particular video that we use in one of the EBBs that shows intense emotion. So before I show the video, I give a little intro. We're about to watch this video. It's about 20 minutes long. Content in the video includes sexual pressure situations, intense emotions, things like that. So now we are going to watch the video. Easing into potentially uncomfortable situations, because that is the moment that youth can opt out. So I don't just say you can opt out, I give them those opportunities to opt in.
Yeah, I thank you very much. I think that's really important. I did have one experience in the classroom where one of my students was in fact a sexual assault individual, and
like a perpetrator or victim. I mean, it doesn't really matter. Go on, please.
I'm sorry, I missed that point.
I'm sorry. I was asking for clarification if they were perpetrator or a victim, but then I realized mid-question that it doesn't matter, really. Okay.
And so the experience was, and this is something that those of us who are in the classroom and have positions of responsibility, we must report. She emailed me to let me know that she, in fact, was a person who had been assaulted and so forth. And I didn't actually get to read the email, unfortunately. I mean, it was still in my inbox, but it was something that was important for me to have the experience with our person who does the work with individuals who have been assaulted, to know that in fact we needed to report that, even if the person didn't want us to. So I think that's why I was raising the question about the trauma framework, such that even if something has come up in a group situation, whether it's a classroom or a meeting that people have joined, such as this one, that there is a way in which this all can be responded to in a way to acknowledge, like you're saying, the trauma-informed, the trauma-sensitive framework.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your experience. I think that's a reality that we need to acknowledge and be prepared for. Another way in our classes that we are trauma sensitives, we disclose that we are mandated reporters and try to do so in a way that doesn't shut down discourse. And if youth do disclose, we have clear roles, responsibilities, and procedure on what to do about it. But that happens behind the scenes. That happens after a class. So during a class, I say, be aware, I am a mandated reporter, and that means if there's any disclosure of certain things, assault, abuse, I must report it. And one of the ways that we allow open communication for youth who may not wish to disclose is we encourage them to not do personal shares, but to just talk about, in general, a person might have these thoughts. In general, a person might have had this experience. So creating that like anonymity. We also have an anonymous question box, giving youth opportunity to ask hard questions, maybe about a specific traumatic experience or something, without disclosing who they are. So I think anonymity and allowing youth the choice to disclose is a big part of being trauma informed and trauma sensitive. And I think the fact that the young girl emailed you and disclosed her experience, her traumatic experience to you, is indicative of her trust in you. You must have done an excellent job building a relationship in order for her to disclose that to you.
Well, we're getting up near the end of our show here. This has been an excellent conversation, and one which you and I hope will continue. But this has been wonderful, and I think some very useful information has been shared in the few minutes that we have left with you or Rosalind, or what was the other lady's name? Huh? Well, I couldn't hear you.
Catherine.
Okay, thanks for the hand sign, because I couldn't read your lips.
You're welcome.
Okay, so if do you guys have any final thoughts that we can wrap up with?
Email us, check out our website, contact us if you want to have more conversation. Got the flyer for FTT up on the screen share. I can email that to you, Lawrence, and we can share that out.
Okay.
A lot of solutions start with conversations, so let's have conversations.
Exactly, and they're in the chat. If you're online, if you can get your chat, you'll see their contact information is in the chat. Okay. Well, we want to thank everyone for showing up and being a part of this conversation. We hope that you will join us next week, the same time and same station. I want to thank you, Danae, for a very stimulating conversation. I mean that in the non-sexual sense.
Happy to be here. I hope I've conveyed how much I enjoy my work. And I'm appreciative to the South Dakota Humanities Council that you would give us this time and space to talk about what we do.
Thank you very much. Well, we'll see you guys all next week, same time, same station. Bye-bye.
Ciao.